Time has always been the great mystery. Since the dawn of humanity, we've looked up at the sky, watched the movement of the stars, the rising and setting of the sun, trying to understand what it means for time to pass. But perhaps time doesn't pass at all. Perhaps we are the ones moving within it. For centuries, physics described time as a straight, predictable, measurable line, a chain of causes and effects, of past generating present and present producing future. Yet as our instruments became more precise and our awareness more refined, something began to emerge. Time might not be linear, and the future might already be touching us in subtle ways. Classical physics believed in closed, isolated systems, predictable and self-contained. But life is not a closed system. It is open, dynamic, constantly exchanging energy, matter, and information with its environment. A living being never stays in equilibrium. It creates balance within movement, turns chaos into order, energy into awareness. And perhaps it is precisely this self-organizing ability that brings us closer to the secret of time. Modern physics has shown that at the quantum level, the laws of reality no longer obey ordinary logic. A particle can exist in multiple places at once, can behave both as wave and as matter, and can even act differently depending on whether it's being observed or not. In the famous double-slit experiment, electrons fired at two slits create an interference pattern, typical of waves, until they are observed. Once an observer looks, the pattern disappears and the electrons behave like solid particles. It's as if reality waits for consciousness to look before deciding what it will become. This simple experiment contains an abyss of meaning. The observer is not neutral. The very act of observing changes the outcome. Consciousness participates in the creation of reality. And there's more. In more recent experiments, physicists have shown that under certain conditions, choices made in the future can alter the statistics measured in the present. This phenomenon, known as retrocausality, suggests that time may be a bidirectional field, a web in which past, present, and future adjust to one another simultaneously, like notes in the same melody. Of course, this doesn't mean the future literally changes the past, but it hints that information, the true fabric of the universe, might flow both ways. And when we think about this spiritually, prayer seems like an emotional translation of that same principle. When we pray, we project intention and emotion toward a desired future. In doing so, we imprint meaning onto the field of time, and this act reorganizes our present. Our mind, body, and choices begin to resonate with what we wish to manifest. Quantum physics reminds us that everything in the universe exists as probability until observed. Before we look, reality is a cloud of potential outcomes. What becomes real is determined by focus, by consciousness itself. Spiritually, we could say the same. Faith collapses probabilities. Prayer is the lens that organizes chaos into meaning. But it isn't about forcing the universe to obey our will. The true power of prayer doesn't lie in control. It lies in alignment. When we pray sincerely, something shifts within the body. The heart rhythm slows, brain waves synchronize, stress hormones decrease. Science can measure these physiological effects, but it cannot measure the inner stillness that arises from surrender. Prayer, in essence, is the state where time stops being a threat and becomes trust. The body is the mirror of belief. The placebo effect reveals that faith is physiological. When we expect good, the body creates good. When we fear harm, the body answers with imbalance. The nocebo effect shows that negative expectation can manifest real symptoms. Science calls this psychophysiology. Spirituality calls it belief. Both describe the same truth: mind influences matter. This intimate relationship between consciousness and reality also appears in life events. Sometimes something happens with such symbolic precision that it cannot be dismissed as coincidence. We think of someone and they call, a song plays with a message we needed to hear, an opportunity appears at the perfect moment. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence between inner and outer worlds. In physics, there's a curious parallel. Quantum entanglement. Two particles that once interacted remain connected forever, even when separated by vast distances. Changing one instantly affects the other. No signal, no waiting beyond space and time. Synchronicity, in a psychological sense, mirrors this principle. When the inner and outer worlds vibrate at the same frequency, the universe seems to respond. But it's important to remember, these parallels are not proof, they are poetry. Science and spirituality speak different languages but describe complementary dimensions of one living reality. While the physicist measures, the mystic feels. Both observe, and observation itself is a form of prayer. From this perspective, retrocausality becomes a metaphor rather than a mechanism. The future doesn't determine the present, it whispers to it. It functions as a compass, sending subtle information that we receive as intuition. When we connect with our future self, the version of us that is already wise, peaceful, healed, we receive fragments of its wisdom in the form of insight. That is what it means to speak with the future. There are ways to cultivate this dialogue. Before sleep, review your day with gratitude, then imagine tomorrow unfolding in harmony. This simple act builds a bridge between today and tomorrow. You can also write letters to your future self, describing how you feel, what you've learned, and what you've achieved as if it had already happened. The brain does not clearly distinguish between real and imagined experiences. It responds to meaning. By emotionally experiencing the future in the present, we begin to shape it. But intention requires ethics. Every thought is a seed planted in the field of the universe, and every seed grows according to the vibration that nourishes it. True prayer never seeks to manipulate, it harmonizes. When our intention is free from control and self-centered desire, it aligns with the greater good. The universe responds to integrity, and we can observe these effects not through blind belief, but through lucid curiosity. Keep a spiritual journal. Record emotions, dreams, synchronicities. Notice patterns. Observe how your body and mind respond. Spirituality becomes a living laboratory where mystery is investigated with both reverence and method. Over time, we realize that these practices aren't separate from daily life. Every gesture, every word, every decision is a chance to align with the flow of time. When we act with awareness, the future begins to reorganize itself around us. Before any choice, we can ask, does this decision reflect my wiser future self? That simple question already changes the energy of the moment. In relationships, to listen deeply is to pray. At work, to act with purpose is to practice spirituality. In crisis, to breathe consciously is an act of faith. True spirituality isn't escape from life, it is presence within life. And the more aware we become, the more time reveals itself as an ally, not an adversary. The future isn't something that comes, it's something that answers. Each thought, each emotion, is a silent conversation with tomorrow. And in the end, we return to the beginning, the mystery. Physics seeks to unify its laws, spirituality seeks to unify the soul. Perhaps both are describing the same universe, seen from two directions, one from the outside, one from within. Maybe time itself is simply how the eternal experiences itself. When we stop trying to control time and start listening to it, we discover something profound. Time speaks the language of love. And love, unlike everything else, transcends time. The future is not distant. It lives now, vibrating in every breath, every intention, every choice. Time doesn't pass through us. We pass through it, leaving traces of consciousness behind. To pray, then, is to speak not only with the future, but with all that we are, past, present, and eternal. And when we do so with humility, time bends, life shines, and the universe responds in silence. Because, in the end, the future is not something that will come. The future is something that already lives within us.